all of us have our own disability or addiction or personal skeleton that drags us down. And it can pop up at any moment and put that cage on us.
Today's episode is sponsored by EncourageX, where you can manage all of your encouragement needs in one place. Personal, authentic, and consistent. EncourageX.com, where relationships mean everything.
What a treat today to have Jane Weiner here with us from Hope Stone Dance. And Jane, you founded Hope Stone, over 20 years ago now, right?
We're going on June 1, we'll start our 22nd year.
Unbelievable. So I got to know Jane when she first moved to Houston. Her sister Susan was undergoing breast cancer treatment, and Jane is a professional dancer in New York, decided to move here to support her sister and be here during her treatment. Susan's doing great, by the way. And in the meantime, Jane has just taken the dance community here in Houston and made it your own. You've carved such a beautiful space for your dancers and your choreography and the message. There's always a message to what you do. So what's your philosophy when it comes to dance?
You can never honor the people who were your teachers. And one of my teachers was Doug Elkins, who I danced with in New York. And he is crazy. He's a crazy guy, but such a huge heart. And one of the things is, instead of being selective, he was community-based in his view. And he would look at not what you were less than, but what you were greater than, and would bring that into his work. And it was such a great way to be a dancer when I was dancing at the time, to be seen for what I did well and not kind of be told, oh, I wish you could do that or do it like this. He would really kind of see that. So there's this huge kind of global view that he gave me. When I moved here, I really thought my career was done. I also want to kind of thank Kathy and Jennifer Wood, who had this tiny little studio here. And I would take care of Susan Monday through Friday while her husband, Alan, was at work, because the goal while she was sick was to keep as normal a schedule as possible for her daughter, Marika, who's now 25 and living in New York, but was 9 months at the time of diagnosis. And on Saturdays, I would go over, and Jennifer and Kathy were so generous and would give me this space to rehearse. And I realized that the other part, I think, of my philosophy is dance, and actually all art, isn't about, and this is hard because I think early on I felt this way, it isn't about impressing you, but it's about bringing you into my world. And it was healing. I would go there on Saturday mornings and I would just heal. And so at that point, where I think my whole life had always been like, can you write a review about me, or am I going to win a Bessie Award in New York? I moved here and I realized, oh my gosh, art is so healing, and it's healing me. I've got this situation where, at that point, Susan was very touch and go. Her percentages were not good. And in order to get through that time, I kind of would go to my little corner and just create first on me. And then there were a couple of dancers here and there that walked in the door. And then the next thing I knew, Susan was doing well, and I was bringing in more dancers and more. It's not even dancers. I feel like it's performers, because my work goes beyond. Sometimes my performers sing and they act and they wear bird cages on their heads, as you just saw lately.
Yes.
And then the other thing about it is, dance was for the people. It wasn't for the elite. And I started dancing at a late age. I was about 19 when I really fully got in. It was always kind of doing some dance classes here and gymnastics there, and I was in the musical and all of that. But at 19, I really got into a very serious ballet class, very behind all the other women from my college who had taken it from birth. I felt like they came out of the womb in point shoes. And I had kind of, because I was physical, I was behind, but I really kept kind of it was like a marathon of dance. So I wasn't an elite dancer. And yet, again, it just filled me. It was the one thing in all of my kind of crazy, busy world and life that I lived, dance fulfilled me the most.
Well, I certainly get it. As you know, I used to dance professionally a long time ago before my career in television. And for me, it was like breathing. It was,
yes.
It's if you're not doing it, you don't feel complete. And for me, it was also healing. When I felt any kind of disarray in my life, going into the studio would just rejuvenate you. And so
it would take you to another world.
It takes you to another world. It really does, being able to express yourself in that way. It's interesting. As long as we've known each other, for some reason, I was thinking that when you moved here, you always had in your mind that you would start a dance company here. Mm-hmm. I did not know that you had basically thought your career would be over.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
so you were basically giving up your career to come here and care for your sister.
At that point, I thought it was that, and you can't plan your life. What do they say? God looks at our planners and laughs.
Yeah, exactly.
And our daytimers or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now I guess it's our iPhones.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what was going on. Where I thought I had this full, rich career, and did in New York. The past 22 years have been tremendous. I felt like Houston has just opened up its arms to me. I felt like Susan and Alan, her husband, were very connected, and that was really a gift, and that kind of helped pave the way. And then when she got better and they kind of became a family, they were a family, but when they really were like, okay,
right.
It's not cancer 9 to 5, it's what I used to say, 24/7.
Right.
And I got to have more free time and all of that.
And then coming here with such a, being a community-minded person, really having that already as part of your DNA. Mm-hmm. And Houston is such a welcoming community.
It is.
And, but I think the fact that you already had it in you to approach it in that way, that the community really embraced you, and just, watching the things that you were able to put together, as a dancer, bringing together, I remember doing, what was it at the Brown?
Pink at the Brown.
Pink at the Brown. So,
and you actually performed in one of them.
I did.
Yeah.
I did perform in Pink at the Brown.
You were ballroom dancing.
I was ballroom dancing then. But what I loved was bringing together all the different ballet companies and the modern company and the jazz company, the theater companies, and just bringing everything together to celebrate what art can do and bring to a community.
And that is so important, because again, I go back to that idea that dance and art is for everyone. And with Hopestone, our tagline is art for all. And I also believe that we're going to solve our problems if everyone starts doing art. Okay, we can have all these solutions, but if as a community we did art on a regular basis, and I'm also going to put in a plug for dance on a regular basis because of the neuroplasticity, findings that they're having with our brain and our body, so much would be healed. So much would solve itself, because exactly what you and I said, we go into that form and the healing begins. And so I think road rage is going to go away. I think, people might put their guns down. On and on and on. Now, it's not going to cure cancer, but it sure is going to make all of it better, because we've also danced with cancer survivors as well. We did belly dancing with cancer survivors.
Right. So this is one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk to you and have you as a guest on the podcast. So most recently, I went to see. Remind me the name of the piece.
Apostrophe S. A Tale of Possession.
A Tale of Possession, and it's phenomenal if you ever get a chance to see it, because every piece that you do says something. This one in particular. So tell the audience a little bit about what it was. And while I was watching that, I was like, I gotta have her on the show. I just gotta have her on the show like now, because this whole idea of where we are as a nation, dance and art have a place
Yes.
in helping to heal that divide. I believe, and I know you believe it.
Oh, I so do.
But please talk about apostrophe S.
Well, and I did the piece thanks to Diverse Works. Sixto Wiegand invited me to do it in 2004, which is when I created the first version of it. I did it again in 2006 at the Wortham, which was lovely, but it didn't work because it wasn't as intimate. And then I did it at the Hobby and also at the Match. We do a performance every year at the Hobby for about 3,000 plus children where they bust the kids in. So this was a little bit more of the child-friendly one. We did one a couple weeks later that was a little more adult version. It grew where there was one gentleman who never took the bird cage off of his head. Or if he did, there was a couple moments, like maybe about 10 minutes where he took it off, but he always had to know where it was. And to me, that is, I think all of us have our own disability or addiction or personal skeleton that drags us down. And it can pop up at any moment and put that cage on us. And we don't see our full worth and our full potential. And we're behind this cage and we think everybody sees that, everybody knows that I'm this or that, and whatever we term ourselves, it's also that idea of like, sometimes we say, oh, that child's ADHD, or, they're on the spectrum, instead of, or they're black, they're white, they're, all of that goes on, instead of
The labeling.
Yeah, the labeling.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes think then we put that label on ourselves. And that was that bird
That's
cage.
the bird cage.
Yeah. Which when it comes off and we find our true self, our authentic self, there's our gift. There's our gift that we can give back to the world. Because when we're behind that cage, sadly, we're really no good to anybody.
We're no good to ourselves.
Yeah.
And then when we don't value who we are,
Right.
then we don't value others. Or if we don't believe in, or if we look at ourselves and feel that something is wrong with us, then oftentimes we project that onto others.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where the
Judgment.
the othering
Yeah.
and the judgment starts to come in. You're not as good as I am. But what's really going on is I don't feel that I'm good enough.
Right. It's that hero zero. Either I'm all the way up here looking down on you and judging you.
Right.
Or I'm all the way down here in that bird cage and you're stepping on me.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I don't know if you may not have noticed at the Hobby, but they were gold. They were gilded cages because that to me kind of wears that. And then the other thing is, again, I did it in 2004 and I made that wall. Who would have thought building?
So talk about the wall. The wall. It's a wall of shoe boxes.
Right. With all the colors and all of the sizes. And to me, it was a wall of community and held together by hot glue. And at some points you could take it off. But to me, when I looked at the color and the diversity, it was amazing. It was over 2,000 shoe boxes, and each shoe box was so different. So what if our wall is one where we all join together, and maybe a little bit more than hot glue gun, but that we create that, because some people who didn't know it was a shoebox thought it was a quilt.
Really?
So instead of it being a wall, can we quilt it together? And I go to like the vision of the AIDS quilt, which got so big and joined so many people together. And so what is it that's going to join us back? So the othering, as you said, can disappear. And I love that idea that when we all die, we're a skeleton. You can't tell who we are. You don't know, yes, you might be able to see some deformities in the skeleton, but we all go down. It's like that ashes to ashes kind of idea. So there has to be a joining together. There has to be that bringing together. And that's why we play Red Rover. In many cases, it's a children's game, but it's kind of like, and I kept having my dancers say, you're mine, you're mine. We can't own a person. You can't own a person. And then at the very end of that game, we hug. So it goes into that hug. So, I think we've got to find how we can, it's sad. I think we're the most cut apart right now. I'm very, very sad to see the finger pointing that's going on. And I even myself did it. I think we all grow up to judge instead of, I think of that Marianne Williamson idea that we're all equal parts of the sun. And so the wall, the wall got a little scary. In fact, sometimes when I would post on social media, I would just say, we're building the set. I was scared to say wall.
So it just hit me. It just hit me. Yeah. That wall. So let's try to explain for the audience what this looks like on the stage. So it's this wall, like you say, of 2,000 shoe boxes, all of different sizes, shapes, colors, that are glued together, and it serves as the backdrop for this piece. And we dance in front of it. You dance in front of it. And the initial dancer has this gilded bird cage on his head, and as you so eloquently described. But just the juxtaposition of that wall and what it stands for with the wall that our president wants to build on the southern border, and what that stands for in some people's minds, because not everyone agrees with what that stands for. Yeah. Some people say that stands for America's sovereignty, and we should keep illegal people out and not deal with that situation in a different sort of way. Whereas the wall in your piece is more about celebrating the diversity and what everything brings, and it's about bringing in and not keeping out. Yeah, and I think it's because, going back to what do I like to dance about? I like to dance about people. I am drilling down to find the humanity. It's not so much about, can my leg go this high or can I turn 4 times, but it's, can I connect to whoever is watching and their humanity. So interesting. It's people. I don't know where we put the word illegal in front of that. People are people. Yeah. Everybody is a people. Yeah. Every single one of us is a people. And so if we can, and that goes back to the otherness, we're back there again. And I feel like we've got to realize that, in all of the spiritual teachings, it is about helping our fellow man and woman. All of the spiritual teachings, every single spiritual teaching out there is about helping. And it's not about, well, my teaching says this and my teaching, all of it talks about healing and helping. So if we, as not a nation, but as a world, could just say the people of the world, that's, and right now, this is a whole nother topic, but we're like cooking our world. So like all of the peoples need to come together. All of the peoples from all over need to come together. There's only one Earth. One Earth. We just, the turtle that's extinct now. All of that. We've got to look at that. So let's not build walls, but let's bring in the diversity and share ideas and share differences and, I don't know, just invite it instead of pushing away. So I'm curious as to your thoughts about art and all the different performing arts, just art in general, being taken out of our schools. Because I know. I just had a talk with Dan Connectus from Tuts, and we were talking about this. Well, I feel like we could almost connect, some dots between the removal of art from our educational system and connect it to kind of where we are now, where we don't value humanity to the degree that maybe we used to. I don't know if it's an unfair comparison, but it just feels like we don't value it as much. And when you and I were in school, we did have the opportunity to, take an art class or take a dance class or whatever. Yeah. And in many cases, our kids today don't have that. No, they don't. And that's the other side of Hopestone, where we go out into the schools and do that. Right. And we're finding what a bridge it is to this humanity. Exactly. And I was saying this morning. I was with 2 friends having coffee, and we were talking about that. And if I had the money, I would do a study on the rise of bullying
with the extraction of art in our schools. I think there's a direct connectedness to it, because in art is the compassion. It's not about size, it's not about how I look, it's really about this creation of our work and the creativity, and creativity wins, and in that case we all win because we're all creative. We just need to learn how to extract it out of our kids. And so I do think that when we have a creative mind, creativity and compassion, I think, are almost the same word when you look at it. Because if you're creative, you're compassionate. If you're compassionate, you're creative. I think they go hand in hand. And so, yeah, it is being extracted because, it's more important to do well on a test that is standardized. And so what if you're a Hispanic student and English is not your first language at home, and so you're then being judged on that? Or an Asian student. I mean, there's all of these. So we've got to look at what, again, this goes back to judging. It goes back to judging. Yeah. Why are we judging our kids? Why are we doing that? To me, it's why can't, and art does this, why can't we find the conduit that child learns the best, and then do it that way? And art and not art with other subjects, art standalone.
So there's a whole movement going on now that does just that, and it's called learner-centered education. And so we can have a whole conversation about that later, but I've become a little bit involved in that community, so I'm starting to learn more about it. But that's the whole concept, is that it's not just students going into a classroom and learning a curriculum, but the classroom is the entire community. Yeah. And so part of the learning takes place in a classroom, part of it might take place, in a community garden, part of it might take place at a local business, it might take place at a grocery store, at a fresh air market. I mean, learning can and should happen in all communities and in all forms, and every child learns differently. And so, and art certainly has a huge place in that. So I wanted to
it's also the Creative Youth Development. There's a group called Creative Youth Development, CYD, and their whole thing is to let it be child-centered projects. So we go in and I teach, and then we work together, and then the children, take over the project. And so their whole belief is, if a group of children could put together a play or create a set together, and I want it to be blue and you want it to be green, and we figure out how to do that, we move into a conference room and the same thing happens. Right. And it's not a power struggle, it's ability to listen. Oh, and art allows us to listen. There's a whole nother conversation of just the listening skills that art gives us.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I wanted to get back to the whole concept of othering and ask you, as I do all of our guests, if there is an instance in your life where you felt like the other, and if so, what was that? How did it make you feel? What did you learn from it? And how are you using those lessons in your life today with what you do?
So it's interesting. There's been a lot of times in my life where I felt like the other. And I think that the biggest is, I grew up during a time when, it was kind of like the California girl was the beauty, long blonde hair, and kind of had that look. Makeup was a big thing. Candy shoes and tight jeans were a big thing during my junior high and high school years. And I hated them. I hated that. I just couldn't. I didn't want to put on a bunch of makeup. I didn't want to wear skinny jeans and high heels. I found, and I think a lot of other girls at my age were really blossoming with their sexuality, and I was kind of holding back. And I felt very, very different, especially in in junior high, which I think a lot of kids feel different. I'm teaching at a middle school right now and kind of going back to like, oh my God, I was so out of place then. And so I think that really struck me as I didn't feel like I fit in. I tried to fit in. I really wanted to be friends with everyone. It was kind of a blessing and a curse that I could be. And then I think I also valued their opinions too much. So I think that was a big time. I don't think I recognized that until probably I started to professionally dance and kind of going back into that whole thing of, even then I felt slightly different because I didn't come out of the womb with my point shoes on. I started dancing at 19, so I felt it again. And yet, every time I would go into the actual dancing, into the performing, I was removed to another place of beauty and love of myself and care and all of that. The other thing is, and I mean, I'll say it, I'm going to out myself, is I'm also 24 years sober. So that was another part of my othering. I found that in the weakest point, when I finally said, I can't do this anymore, I can't abuse myself with drugs and alcohol anymore, my othering, I joined a group where my seat was the same size as everybody else's, and I was equal. And kind of going back to that Marianne Williamson, I was the same size of the sun as everybody else. I wasn't bigger or I wasn't smaller. I was right-sized, as we like to say. And I think that was a huge transformative time for me. And it's why I sometimes think we all have that disability. There's always something that makes us feel that way. And the biggest thing of me getting out of that othering was finally asking for help. Instead of saying, oh, I got this. Linda, it's okay. I got it, which I did for so long. I just kept saying, I'm okay. And I had a wise woman that said, fine and okay are not emotions, Jane. How are you? And that's when I was like, I just need help. I need help. So.
Yeah, sometimes it's so hard to ask for help. I did not know that you had struggled with that. I had no idea. Yeah. Well, congratulations to you for your 24 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's wonderful. And, part of it is, we are a group of anonymity, but at a certain point, it's a lifestyle that has brought me so much, peace and serenity that if somebody's out there struggling, I want to say, you can do this too.
Right.
Yeah, you can find that.
You've mentioned a couple of times the work that you do in the schools, and particularly in middle school, which is very, very tough age. That's the time when it's pivotal. You can lose a kid.
Yeah.
In 7th and 8th grade. I mean, that's around the time when you can really either lose them or help them move in the right direction. When you see kids being othered, how do you handle that as someone who's in the school and part of the artistic community? How and then using your own experience, what do you say? What do you do, or what do you model for them?
I give them responsibility and empowerment. As soon as I see it, I will immediately make sure that I ask them to help me.
The person being othered or the person doing the othering?
The person being othered. Okay. Also, the person doing the othering, it's probably happening in their life too. So they're both being othered.
Right.
And their lack of, their weakness in that situation is making them find power. So they're zero in this situation, which means they're trying to find the hero, which is not a hero, but they're trying to find their power.
Right.
So both of them are, and I have this one class in particular where I sometimes think, I think that one might be, possibly being bullied or there's something going on. And I think that guy could be, or that girl could be doing it, but I also think it's because it's going on. So how do I empower both of them so that they can feel positive empowerment instead of negative empowerment, because usually a child or even an adult in that situation, they just want to be seen. So let's let them be seen in a positive way instead of a negative way. And hopefully that will help them with it. So, sometimes I might have a job for them that I'll notice that one and I'm like, you're in charge of this. And that I learned years ago. I had a little girl, we were at Bates Dance Festival, little girl that would not do anything. She's about 13 or 14, would not do anything. She just kind of sat with her arms folded. I think her name was Stephanie. Would you come dance? No. Would you dance? Would you drum? No. So one day, actually the other drummer that was there said, make her be your tech person. So I said, hey Stephanie, would you help me? I need you to kind of get the sound ready. It was like overnight a different kid.
Wow.
So it's finding
that
we have to find the niche for these kids.
What is it that turns on that light bulb for them?
So if you're not good at football, you might be good at singing. If you're not good at singing, you might be good behind the scenes. And it's giving every single kid a chance to find that. And that, let's go back to our school system. We've got to take the time, and a standardized test does not do that. What we need to do is really, what are the questions that we ask a child? How do we bring them out? How do we figure out what they need? Are they ready to come out? Are they LGBTQ? Do they need that support so that they don't feel othered? All of that. So what can we do to support our children? They are the most important natural resource we have. They are so important. We cannot screw around with them with our schools. We have got to, we are the most diverse city, so every child needs to be treated equally. And art is one of those things. Art is an equalizer. We've always said that. So let's just get it into our schools any way, shape, and form. And not to be tested, to just be. Let it just be and sit on these kids and do the work that it does.
Wow. I love your passion. I always love talking to you because you just bring your whole self to everything that you do. So as we wrap this up, if there were one thing that you would want people to take away from this conversation, from your love and respect for art and what it can do, not just for our children, but for our world, what is that takeaway that you want people to have?
So it is, I feel that this kind of goes back to the community. Like I think about like Scottish dancing or Irish dancing, like everybody did it. You go to some of these other countries and like a folk song comes on and like from the 99-year-old grandfather down to the 2-year-old, they're all doing it, where they're singing. We all, not watching art, and I love to watch art. I mean, I love to go to the museums, and I love to see dance companies, and I just saw Catastrophic do Toast, and it blew me away. Brian Yuka is an old friend from New York. I mean, I love going to see it, but just watching it is not enough. We all have to get our hands into it, whether we take an art drawing class, whether we learn guitar, whether we decide that we're gonna take a theater class, get involved in a community play, take a social dancing, whatever it is. Regular basis to me means once a week. It's like bowling, it's once a week. So all of us need, and need's a strong word, we need to be doing art on a regular basis. Because it's going to change our mind. It's going to change everything in our body. The minute we start doing it, we're going to feel uncomfortable, we're going to feel passion, we're going to feel a drive, we're going to feel like this I can do, this I can't do, I want to be able to do this, I can't do that, I want to try to do that. We're going to be community. We put the damn electronics down and we are in a community, maybe taking ballet or doing a theater class or doing clay or painting, all of us together.
Getting to know each other. And ourselves.
Yeah. And probably one of the most intimate, has a good and bad connotation, but it's a good connotation because we do need to know ourselves. It's the mindfulness. It's the most mindful thing we can do. So the takeaway is quit watching it. Quit just sending your kid to it. We should all be doing it. I say that to my parents. Are you dancing? What are you doing for yourselves? You're making an example of for your child, so we should be doing it. Ballroom, right? Ballroom's great. Ballroom's great. Tango. Come on.
I know.
Yeah. So I think not as a nation, but as a peoples, we should all be doing art, whatever it is, whatever form that it takes, a camera, whatever, just start doing it because it's going to completely change your DNA, to be more aware and we see things through a different lens.
Well, you've just been given your marching orders, okay? You've just been given your marching orders. This is just so amazing, Jane. Thank you so much for sharing your passion for love and life and art and helping people to see it through your lens, because it's a beautiful way to look at the world. So thank you for
having me.
yourself.
It's been a joy.
Thank you.
Such a joy.
And thank you for taking the time to listen and watch. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for giving our guest permission to speak and for having the courage to listen with an open mind. If the mission of Our Voices Matter resonates with you, please like, subscribe, download, and share, and then join the conversation, because it really is going to take all of us to make a difference.